It's beginning to feel a lot like change out in Baton Rouge, and even though the game was played out in Fayetteville, certainly does seem like LSU has turned the corner. Final score 34-10, and we have a lot to discuss. Welcome on into the SEC Unfiltered postgame show. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, breaking down everything that we saw tonight between the Razorbacks and the Tigers. Real quickly, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below because we're breaking down every single game throughout the SEC regular season. Also, make sure that you hit that ring notification. That way you keep up to date with all live instant reactions, Dave Talk Ball, Sunday Fun Day, the Monday Morning Power Hour, any content that we do on this channel. Make sure you hit that ring notification. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson, Dave at Mock 10 Sports, and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This postgame show is brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Go to PrizePicks.com, use the promo code SECU at sign up to get a $50 instant play when you decide on your first $5 lineup. Do you believe in the over of Nico Iamaleava moving forward? Do you believe in the over of Caden Durham moving forward? Do you believe in the over of turnovers caused by Blake Baker and this Bayou Bengal defense? Whatever you want to bet on, make sure you do so at prizepicks.com. Promo code SECU for $50 off with your first $5 play. Dave, not the best performance in terms of numbers for Garrett Nussmeier. Not the best performance in terms of consistency through the passing attack. Not even the best numbers when it comes to the identity on the ground. LSU, as a unit, still only rushed for roughly about 4.1 yards per play. But it was a consistent game plan. They didn't allow last week to get a little bit too big for them. They were able to stay the course. They were able to stay ahead. And now they're sitting at 6-1 with probably, for my money at least, the best still ahead for the Bayou Bengals.
No, 100% agree with you, Cole. Very mature win. I don't care if you'd have won that game by one, but they controlled the game from start to finish. Very impressive win. I know if Georgia probably if they end up holding Texas off here, they'll get a big win, check mark next to their name. Tennessee will. I think you can make a case LSU has the most impressive win. I mean, when you factor in how the last week went, they didn't lead until the game was over, they hit until overtime, won the game in overtime against Ole Miss, and you bounce back. Like you said, Cole, the numbers aren't going to support some dominant performance.
No.
But if you watch the game, and I was someone who picked Arkansas, I wasn't overly confident. I thought it'd be something like 29-26 Arkansas. Just thought it was a bad spot for LSU in the schedule, good spot for Arkansas. Well, it ended up not really mattering right there. You just tell LSU's the better football team. And they just handled business across the board. It's not going to be a phenomenal box score, but you control the game. My most impressive thing, honestly, is, the defensive line. Again, that front seven, Whit Weeks and the boys, holding a really good Arkansas rushing attack and a good running back like Jaquindon Jackson. They held him to 26 yards on 5 carries and just rushing in total 38 yards on 19 carries for 2 yards per carry. That's impressive across the board. Feels like since Harold Perkins has been out, that defense is settled. Everyone's settled into their roles.
Everyone knows where they're playing. I think
the floor of that defense is risen up.
I'd agree with that. I think the other thing that's really important is everyone kind of understands their assignment. They're not having to shift around where Weeks comes in because of now we're going to play Harold Perkins as a spy. Now we're going to line him up in the nickel position. Now we're going to line him up to be that star defenseman. Everyone has an identity, and it's been working. 3 sacks on the day, 3.5 tackles for loss in this matchup, 6 pass deflections, a big turnover. They were flying around the football field. More importantly, they put pressure on Taylon Green to be a one-dimensional player. And I think that was really, really important. If we're going to get beat, we're going to get beat with him staying behind the line of scrimmage. When he does at the tuck and run, we are going to watch him make plays with his legs that really don't gain many yards. We're going to force this passing attack to have to be the backbone of this team. Ultimately, I don't think you saw that from Taylon Green tonight. You didn't see it from Andrew Armstrong being that number one. Whatever it wasn't the best offensive performance. And then again, we got to talk about what we saw from LSU's offense. They capitalized when they had to. They played a consistent, clean overall game. Yeah, they had a couple of fumbles, but at the same time, for the most part, you didn't see a turnover from, they didn't have any fumbles. They got fumble recoveries. You didn't see a turnover from Garrett Nussmeier. You saw a ground game that when it needed to be potent, it was potent. Mature win. I think the best way that you talk about this LSU team is it was a mature overall performance, top to bottom, offense, defense.
Yeah, and then you factor in, like you mentioned, your +3 in turnover margin. You dominate the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football. You're going to win a lot of football games if you do that on a consistent basis. You're +3 and you dominate the line of scrimmage. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to lose most nights. I mean, or any night. So again, that big win, taking the road, the show on the road there, because that was a hostile environment. Arkansas fans were hungry for that. So I mean, they were coming off momentum off a bye week, off the big win against Tennessee. So that was no fluke. Big win for LSU there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That was impressive.
The other part that's really important is that when you need your special teams to step up, I think that's a very underlying thought that nobody pays that much attention to, because it's a kicker. He's not going to mean anything unless it's a game-winning field goal.
Ramos is pretty good. You're right.
But Ramos, again, 33-yard field goal. Then he makes a 48-yarder. Then he makes a 33-yarder. And then he allows you to kind of keep that momentum going into halftime before Caden Durham decides to go ahead and get a 2-yard run and then a 1-yard run. And so at that point, he kind of pulls away. But that special teams element does allow you to feel confident that regardless if we're in the red zone, if we're in the 40, we can capitalize, walk away with 3 points, and keep momentum on our side. That, to me, is what really stands out. LSU has 3 elements to their team that will keep them ahead. They have a passing attack. You saw the run game. It finally was hitting. When it does hit, it feels like it can be a backbone for you. You have a defense that is playing above average right now and really has done a good job of finding the weaknesses of every team and kind of pulling them out to be their big, their big selling point. And you have a special teams where you can trust your kicker. Again, 4 for 4 on field goals tonight. Nobody's going to be complaining.
Yeah, no, they factored it. I mean, I don't really think LSU did many things. I mean, yeah, Garrett Nussmeier left some plays on the field, but I think it's kind of going to be him down the road. He's going to make some highs, and again, it hadn't been real low. It's just I think he's going to leave some plays out there at times. Again, that LSU offensive line, 0 sacks. I think it's a pretty solid Arkansas defensive front.
It's a very solid Arkansas defensive front.
I mean, LSU's holding their own. I mean, but we knew they would be good up front of the offensive line, as most people did. So I don't really think that's a surprise. But factor that going against South Carolina's got a really good front. Ole Miss got a good front. Arkansas's got a good front now. A&M next week. They have been battle tested across that from a pass protection standpoint. Cole, you brought up the running game getting going. Like you said, you got to like the direction. If you're an LSU fan going in to the big one next week in Kyle Field, can you be, again, you probably get annoyed at me saying this stat, but LSU's on the clock now. They can officially join to be the 3rd team to set the record of consecutive back-to-back weeks winning on the road in the SEC. Only 2019, LSU, 21, Georgia, since the year 2019 have done that in the SEC.
The big thing I will say is, again, penalties are going to be make or break. We watched the Alabama-Tennessee game, how bad penalties put Alabama behind the sticks, how well it put Tennessee behind the sticks at times. But in this game, you had 11 penalties. Like, if you want to nitpick for a team like LSU, you had 11 penalties for 80 yards. That can't be sustainable when you make it to Atlanta, but let's not put the wagon before the horse. However, overall, there's very little to actually say was wrong in this matchup. And for me, the reason why I view this as a better win is because of, much like we talked about last week with the Vanderbilt game, where Vanderbilt didn't have the same level of competition that they were going up against in Kentucky. It was the fact that people were starting to pay attention to them. People were starting to put them in a really, really, really prominent light. And then they said, okay, let's go to work. Let's go ahead and make sure that we are not going to shoot ourselves in the foot and get too big for the limelight. We're going to deliver. We're going to have a clean, consistent performance. They had a couple of turnovers, but ultimately they still got a win. They got a road win. Same thing for LSU. It's a more impressive win for me because people were starting to pay attention. This LSU team, don't look now, but they're undefeated in conference play. They get to go on the road for the next 2 matchups. If they win those games, well, what are we going to be saying at this point? Are they now in the hunt to make it to Atlanta? Are they now in the hunt to be a guarantee for the college football playoff? And they said, okay, we know that people are talking about us. Let's give them a reason to keep talking about us in a positive light. Overall clean, overall concise. To me, that is exactly what you want to see from Brian Kelly in year 3. He at this point is 100% living up to his promise about judge me in year 3. What I'm judging is straight up a very clean, concise performance every single game. And they look like they're getting better at the right time.
Yeah, they've gotten better. I mean, think about what we were talking about them after the South Carolina game.
Yeah.
A lot of people were down on them from a standpoint like, God, how good is this team? And then they went on a little, 2 weeks where they weren't talked about a lot because they didn't play any conference games. It was like South Alabama, UCLA, back to back to back. It was kind of, and then a bye week. Remember, so it was like they went like 3 weeks without really being in, but we're getting better as it proved out. Man, that Ole Miss game, that could be the game you look back on in LSU season. That them coming from behind, they were down the whole game and just flipped their whole season. And you're sitting there, they're in the playoffs come December.
What I think is really interesting is that there's two trains of thoughts. The first is you don't want to play all of those non-conference games because if the competition is not going to be that challenging. And then when you get to conference play, it ends up hurting you. That's Ole Miss. Ole Miss looked awful. They looked anemic. They had no identity offensively against Kentucky. And it came back to bite them in the ass because of they played all these non-conference matchups. Where for LSU, they played that game on the road in a neutral site location against USC. It was a game that probably Brian Kelly and this offense wants back. But then they went on the road again. They found a way to get a win. Am I going to sit here and say that it was the most clean, polished win of all time? No. I mean, again, we've had this argument back and forth. Did the refs have a role in the loss for South Carolina? My opinion, yes. Yes, they did. But also, they blew a 17-point lead. They found a way to come back. They found a way to come back in a hostile environment that is Willie B. They found a way to show you that they were the more complete team on a Saturday in Cola. And now they carry that momentum. They learn from their mistakes. They handle business against Ole Miss. They handle business against Arkansas. Now they're going to feel like that they can hold their own against Texas A&M. They get a bye week to get healthy, and then they welcome in Alabama, which is going to be a night game. If they win that game, Dave, their schedule is extremely promising at that point. Vanderbilt, Florida, and Oklahoma to close out the year, if I'm not mistaken. You can drop one of those games and still go to Atlanta.
Hell, I think they're in phenomenal shape if they just win next week.
If they win next week, it's very easy to start having the conversation about college football playoff. Now, SEC championship game, we still have to wait a little bit because if 2 losses may not get you in. But at the same time, if 1 loss occurs to Alabama, to Florida, to Ole Miss, to Vanderbilt for that matter, they still.
But I think if they win next week, I don't see more than 1 loss left.
I don't think.
That's what I'm saying. I think they would get in. I think they would finish 7. If they win next week, I feel pretty confident in saying LSU probably finishes 7-1 in league play, if not better.
If they're 7-1 in league play, then they're going to Atlanta. And again,
that's what I'm saying. I think next week's bigger than the Alabama game. I mean, you can handle your business before you even play Alabama.
The reason next week is so big is because one of these 2 teams is going home with their first conference loss. And that's the big story.
Winner feels phenomenal.
They should, because also when you look at the games, as long as you're not the reason that you're shooting yourself in the foot, you probably are pivoting toward the conversation of going to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And for my money, and I've said this for a while, if you go to Atlanta, even if you're 10-2 going into that game, it's going to be really hard for me to consider you not in the playoff because if you get a game that wasn't promised on the schedule.
Against good competition.
Well, the other part is, again, are we going to penalize you for going 10-2 during the regular season, 7-1 in conference play, but because if you lost a game that wasn't planned at the start of the year, maybe you won't get the 5 seed. Maybe you won't get to host a playoff game.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say
that
you belong
8-9
in the
range.
You will be in the playoff. You belong in the playoff.
No, I agree. You shouldn't be penalized for playing another top 10, easily top 10 team on a neutral field. But no, I think, massive. I'd imagine college game days in College Station next week. I mean, to me, you could easily make a case that's I
don't think it's going to College Station. I don't. I can't see it when it's already been to College Station. That's the only reason.
They've gone twice a couple of plays. I mean, it's the best game of the week for sure.
It's 100% the best game of the week. No doubt about it.
I think essentially the winner of this is almost, unless you really stub your toe down the line, has a great phenomenal, like a 95% chance to be in Atlanta.
I would say, and then again, if you're 95%.
Now, Georgia wins tonight. That mixes things up, though, because they would still only have 1 conference loss.
A lot of things should change with that for sure. Let's talk a little bit about Arkansas. I would be hard-pressed if we didn't. It just never felt like Arkansas found an identity. Like even when they tried to mix some things up and they tried to kind of get the passing attack going with Andrew Armstrong and Isaac Satenga and Luke Haas, it just never felt like Taylor Green got comfortable. And maybe that's a testament to what we've seen for how this defense is playing underneath Blake Baker. but also kind of felt like the play calling was a little askew for my money, at least in the first half. It felt like that Taylor Green wasn't playing under pressure. It felt like that he was a little bit more comfortable, but the play calling wasn't seeing eye to eye with him for some reason.
No, I think Arkansas would have lost to a lot of teams in the league tonight. I think they just played bad tonight. I mean, some of it, give LSU credit, but I just think overall, like it's like you said, they just never got going offensively. And so, yeah, like you said, get some of that, give LSU credit, but it's just Jaquindon Jackson was always, it felt like every carry he got, he came back off limping off the side. They could never get into any rhythm, like you said, from a play calling standpoint, getting into your best player's hands. Taylor Green seemed off. Defense made some plays at times. Yeah, there were some penalties there, like off, like pass interference calls and stuff like that, that were probably a little 50-50 or probably went against Arkansas, honestly. But that's stuff you face every game. You got to overcome it. And it just felt like they never took any kind of momentum and carried it over. Then LSU got up 17 and kind of just went boa constrictor mode and just suffocated them, and it was over. Like LSU was almost just like, yeah, once we got up 17, this game's over. I don't know. I thought Arkansas played pretty bad tonight. I mean, you turn the ball over 3 times, you get dominated up front. You're not going to beat anybody. You're not going to beat any good team.
Well, think about this. Remember the South Carolina game against Ole Miss a couple of weeks ago? When you look at how early on South Carolina goes for the fake punt, and then they're down 14-0 already because they have a turnover, and you miss a field goal on the opening drive, and then a fumble on the very next drive, and LSU is now capitalizing, and they're up 13. They're up at this point 13-0 before you even reach the board, and then it's 16-7 at half. Again, those are just things to where it's like, well, we can't play catch up. Like, we're going to have to not only strike fast, but we're going to have to put a lot of pressure on our defense to get a 3 and out. Because now that we know Ramos's range, he's going to put himself in at least anywhere between the 41 and the 48-yard marker to be able to drain 3 points. Now we're still having to play catch up even more. And it turns from being down by 4 points to being down by 7 points to being down by 10 points. And that became a big deal. So how they started this game off, missing that field goal, getting that turnover, and it being 13-0, they put themselves in a hole that it felt like against a team that is starting to find its identity defensively, they couldn't come back. And to me, that's the main problem, is that when you are an organization and a program that does have some life, does have some bit of what I would consider to be promising results and promising players, especially offensively, but then you're trusting your defense to have to bail you out and get a 3 and out. And then you're trusting your offense to have to, on the very next drive, go out there and strike. And it just never feels like that you're comfortable. Ultimately, for my money, it just became a major problem for Arkansas tonight, especially early on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. They could really get nothing going. You, like you said, you start off missing field goals. And their kicker really hadn't been good all year. I know he made a 52
I think he made a 51-yarder earlier
tonight. But traditionally, I mean, statistically, he hadn't been very good this year. I don't know. Just a game I think that's Arkansas, man. Sometimes they I don't know. That was their first game all year, though. I think you would agree, Cole, that they were just like, yeah, they were bad from start to finish. There really wasn't. Ignore these other games. Oklahoma State, they looked good for a half. Auburn, they looked good.
No.
They've been highs and lows throughout games. This was the first game that you were kind of like, yeah, they just played really bad.
When you think about it, Arkansas has found ways in 2 matchups this year to outgain opponents and yet lose. In this game, they didn't outgain them. 393 to 277. They were worse on third down conversions. They were worse through the air. The only thing that they were better at was yards per pass attempt. LSU averaged 6.7, Arkansas averaged 7.7, and they had fewer penalties. But they led in turnovers. They didn't lead in time possession. It was an overall for what I would consider to be minuscule offensive performance. And again, your defense can only do so much. The other part that was really important, look at what LSU was able to do when they got the football after a turnover, after a missed field goal. They capitalized. So they put up points. The missed field goal, then it was 10-0. The fumble, then it was 13-0. The interception right after halftime leads to a touchdown. Now you're up 24-10. So it was just little things like that to where they're putting up points and they're taking away points that probably should have been in your favor, and they didn't pin you back into your own end zone or into your own 20, that already gave an advantage to LSU tonight. And those little things are the major difference about you keeping in the game and staying active. And you saw it. You saw it on multiple occasions.
I still think Arkansas gets the 6, though. I mean, next week, though, is an interesting game. You got to win at Mississippi State. You beat Louisiana Tech, you're probably at 6. I don't know if you beat Ole Miss, Texas, maybe Missouri. I don't know, but 6. I think if they were to win tonight, 7 or 8 were real. So, I mean, I think Sam Pittman's going to be fine. I think just a disappointing game tonight. Give LSU credit as well.
At this point, here's the thing. For Arkansas, we're not going to be a dark horse to make the college football playoff. We're probably not going to be ranked unless we start winning out. We're probably going to have to play the role of spoiler for several teams, like a Texas, if they lose 2 games at some point. That's what you're saying. But when you look at LSU, everything is still ahead of them. They still look like a really complete team. And I think they're only going to get better. But for Arkansas now, it's, okay, can we get to 6 wins? Can we get to bowl eligibility? Can we have more consistency? That's it for me. Like, they were just, that is what you have to look forward to.
That was the goal of this year. You get 6, 7 wins with the realistic goal. I mean, I think I had them 6. Realistic win total going into 2024.
Probably. I mean, let me ask you, was this one of those games where, kind of like how we talked about after the Oklahoma State game, kind of like how we talked about after the A&M game, culture's a little bit rocky to where we don't trust Sam Pittman coming back?
I think if you ask most Arkansas fans, 6-6 does nothing for them. I think it's just kind of like, yeah, he's going to come back because we're just not going to fire him, but I wouldn't be against us going a different direction. I think I think 6-6 in year 4, year 5 for people like I brought up with Shane Beamer before. In year 4 and year 5 literally does nothing for you. It may not get you fired if you're in a South Carolina or Arkansas, like the mid-tier SEC schools,
Sure.
But I don't think it moves any kind of needle for you when you're having the same conversation heading into 2025 again. So I think he just renews his lease for another year.
If he wants it. I think that's the main point. But for LSU, I've already said that they're going to the playoff. I said after last week when they won against Ole Miss, this is going to be a team that I think comes to life in the second half. They don't miss a beat. If they drop a game, it's because of some team wakes up and plays on their level. I think LSU is setting a standard for this season. They still have the best ahead of them. I will not be shocked if they were to go 11-1, if they play the way they play tonight against every team.
I mean, next week's it.
Probably. I mean, honestly, next week in the Alabama game. And the Alabama game, I still feel like right now it's because it's the Alabama game. And it always just feels like one of those really tough calls. And I get it. It's a new version. It is. It's Kalen DeBoer's Alabama. It's not Nick Saban's Alabama. But still, we have not seen what Nick Saban's Alabama, what Kalen DeBoer's Alabama can do when it travels to Tiger Stadium. But those are the only 2. That's it. You'll beat Oklahoma. I think that you'll handle business against Vanderbilt. I don't know what version of Florida is going to be taking the field when you take them on. So literally your next 2 games will decide if you're in the playoff. And if they play the way they did tonight, complete, concise, and cohesive performance offensively, defensively, and on special teams, they're not losing either one of those games. So 11-1 is on the table. Atlanta is on the table. The college football playoff is on the table. And a first-round bye is on the table. And it feels so mind-boggling because of LSU was this team that we we didn't. I personally didn't. I know that Chris didn't. But we said that this was a team that could be really interesting because they didn't go out into the transfer portal. Instead, what they did was they landed the right teachers. And because they have the right personnel and the right people calling the plays, putting people in the right situation, that has allowed them to find out who they are. Like for me, when I look at everyone else in the SEC, I kind of have some questions. I don't have many questions when it comes to Texas. I don't have many questions when it comes to Oklahoma. When it comes to Georgia. What I wonder is what could be the weak point? I think for LSU, the weak point is if we shoot ourselves in the foot because the IQ is there, the meticulousness is there. They're completely putting themselves in a great situation and they're not making dumb mistakes. And
I think all those teams have holes. None of those teams are complete teams. I don't think so. I don't think you watch Georgia and I'm like, that's a complete football team across the board. No, Georgia has definitely secondary holes. Yeah. Texas has proven tonight they have holes. LSU has holes. Again, LSU's personnel is only going to get better. I still don't think the interior is that great. I think it's a coaching thing. Again, so I wouldn't say LSU's personnel is there. I would disagree with you.
No, but No, I'm not saying that their personnel isn't there. They have holes, but what I'm saying is the biggest hole for them is shooting themselves in the foot. Because of tonight, you saw great run game, solid run game, an overall mature performance from a quarterback who didn't have a turnover, didn't put the ball in harm's way, and kept the offense afloat. So, in my opinion, the way that LSU plays as a mature roster, especially with the veterans on the offense, guys who came on in who want to be a part of what is Bayou Bengal culture, and the teachers that they have defensively, that to me feels like as long as they're not shooting themselves in the foot, they feel like a team that you can trust to get to 10 wins. And when they get 10 wins,
I'd be a little surprised right now for that if they don't finish 10-2. No, I more coaching. Still think Brian Kelly botched some of the recruiting stuff on defense, but the hires. I mean, I think it was a good call by the LSU administration to hire Blake Baker and them.
I think on top of that, the fact that right now they look like literally worth every single penny and that they're going to get a pay raise, and they probably have earned that pay raise in the offseason. It's money well spent, and it's money that I think at this point will allow you to continue to bring in the right. I think
it saved Brian Kelly's job.
I think it bought him more time. That's for damn sure. I don't think it saved his job. I think what it did was it extended that.
No, it said because at some point he would have got let go within the next 3 or 4 years if you kept that defense up. You bringing in Blake Baker and them, that saved his tenure because internally you had the wrong guy making roster decisions. Where Blake Baker and I think Bo Davis are not the personalities that are like, no, running backs coach Frank Wilson, you're not telling me who I'm taking on the defensive line or on my defense. I think they came in, and I think Matt House would take that. So that was kind of the internal politics of the program switched over that I don't think a lot of people would know unless you know people there.
All right, real quickly, do you think that LSU right now should be a favorite to go to Atlanta?
I'd have to answer that after next week. I think it comes down to next week.
Do you think next week the winner of that game? Let me rephrase that. Do you think the winner of next week's game is going to Atlanta?
I mean, I feel like you'd have to say yes, but if Georgia wins this game, I mean, they're still in the thick of the thing with only one conference loss. So, dude, it's going to come down to just some of these crazy tiebreakers that we've talked about. There's not a lot of common opponents, or they hadn't played each other. So it's going to come down to you. I mean, you made a good point the other day, Cole. That Georgia Ole Miss game is going to be massive from an SEC. Who plays in the SEC championship game?
I feel like right now the winner of next week's game, and I think LSU's winning that game, they're going to Atlanta. I do. There's something about the way that this team has played, the way they've gotten better, and the way that they look mature that honestly has stood out. And I think that at this point, it's hard to find the flaws that are outside of just personnel when it comes to your level of talent, because it's an IQ standpoint. They're playing 4D chess when everyone else is playing checkers, and they're making the most of it, and they're not putting themselves in harm's way. And as long as they continue to do that, I think they're in a really good spot. But like, rate, review, subscribe. Make sure that you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave at Mock 10 Sports, me at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download the podcast version of the show and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. Before we get on out of here, just do yourself a favor. We got another reaction show coming up in not too long. Texas versus Georgia. Whoever comes out on top in that one, we're going to be talking about it. So make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and that ring notification. And also you want to hit that ring notification. That way you keep up with live videos when we talk about LSU, when we talk about Arkansas, when we talk about Texas or any other team, and any other live shows. Sunday Fun Day, Dave's Talk Ball, the Monday Morning Power Hour, countless other things on this channel. So hit subscribe, hit that ring notification. Don't miss out on the action. LSU, bowl eligibility, and now feeling high and mighty going into College Station to Arkansas. Well, 6 wins is still on the table. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back as soon as the clock strikes 0 down in Austin, Texas. Peace.